Hey, Achievers, it's Kindra Hall. I'm going to give you just a couple seconds here to sign on. I was just talking to Garrett behind the stage, backstage, and he was saying it's a beautiful day in Texas, but I am in New York City where it is just raining and cloudy. I would love to know where all of you are joining from. So please send me a message in the chat. Let me know who you are, where you're from. My name is Kindra Hall. In case you didn't know, I'm the Chief Storytelling Officer here at Success, long time lover of success. I host the podcast Success Stories with Kindra Hall. And today, the team actually had a very specific topic uh, they wanted us to discuss. And I thought it was really timely, and I'm happy to be here to discuss it. So today, I'm going to be sharing my story or my strategies really for breaking the burnout cycle. Let me know in the chat if you have ever faced burnout before, if it has become like a cyclical thing for you. You're going along just fine, things get really intense, you burn out, maybe you completely crash. I have definitely had those moments of burnout. And I feel like over the years, I personally have gotten a lot, the Success Achievers community is in it right now. I feel like I myself have gotten a lot better at managing it. If this is something that you yourself want to work on, if you are in the middle of a burnout phase or you can sense one coming, I know that summer vacation can sometimes be filled with a lot of joy. Hey, Laura from Oklahoma. Sometimes it can be filled with a lot of stress as schedules move around. We are going to be hosting a 30-day challenge all about, hi, Lauren Cannon, I miss you, all about breaking the burnout cycle. That will be in the Achievers group, so keep your eyes open for that. But here's where I want to start with one of my many stories of burnout, and then a few of the key strategies I use to break this cycle. And really, the strategy is asking yourself some really specific questions. So, as I was thinking about this, I thought about one time in particular, and actually one evening in particular. Hey, everyone who's tuning in. It would have been the summer of 2019, and I was in the middle or coming to the very end of launching my book, Stories That Stick. It released in September 2019, and I had a really big goal when it came to that book. And I think that is actually something that happens. That's one of the reasons that burnout is so prevalent, especially among achievers, is we set really big goals and we do whatever we can to achieve them. And that's where I was in that moment. When I say we, it was my husband and I were really in charge. We were the head of the launch team. And then, of course, we have our two kids, and they were a part of it too. And it was getting, hey, Rudy, I'm in New York too. Hey, neighbor. I was traveling all the time. I mean, I didn't even have a time zone. I was coming and going so many places. We were shipping packages because we were doing pre-orders of the book and giving people previews of the book if they pre-ordered. So we were shipping things. We were trying to create new opportunities for people to bulk order the book. We were running all because I had the goal of being on the bestseller list. And we were killing ourselves for it. And Michael and I, we've been working together ever since we met. We met at work before we started our own company together. Hey, everyone who's tuning in. And we'd worked in really extreme circumstances before, but this was just too much. And we were yelling at each other, we were fighting, it was bad. And I remember one night in particular, we were yelling at each other. I was in the kitchen. He was in the living room. Our kids had gone to their bedrooms. And this is not our typical MO. This is not how we communicate with each other. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I want to quit. Yelled it. And he said, I don't want to do this anymore either. And we both just collapsed and took the rest of the night off. And I remember that night laying in bed awake thinking, where did we go wrong? And how do I not do this to myself again? Um, and we've had those moments throughout. I mean, I've had those moments in high school where I had complete burnout. I had those moments during the pandemic as a parent where I had complete burnout. So if you've ever had that moment where you lay in bed wondering, how do I stop from feeling this way? I've been there. And here are a few things that I found really help. A set of specific questions you can ask yourself to figure out the best way out of your burnout and the best way forward so you don't face burnout again. So, a couple of questions. Number 1, why? Number 2, where? Number 3, what? Number 4, how? And then there's one more question that is the most important of them all, but I'm going to save that to the end. So these are the questions that I systematically go through and ask myself when I feel burnout approaching. And I'm really hoping these are questions you can ask yourself too that will help keep you on the right path instead of a full crash and burn. So first, the question of why. And as achievers, I encourage you to ask yourself this question at least once a month. Why am I working so hard? Why? Why am I putting it all out there? Why am I burning the midnight oil? Why am I saying no to my friends, to my family? Why am I not? Why? Now, this isn't a why, God, why question, but this is a really, you need to know the answer to this question. And the answer to this question can have a significant impact on whether you burn out or not. So two examples of when I've asked myself this question and two very different ways forward based on my answer. So let's go back to 2019 when we were running all over, doing everything we could to try to launch this book. I was facing burnout. Things were miserable. I asked myself, why? Why are we doing this? And the answer was very clear. It was because I wanted my book to be a bestseller. And I'd seen people go before me saying they wanted a best-selling book, and they kind of just wrote a book and took a picture of it and smiled on Instagram and said, go buy my book. And that was it. And it didn't become a bestseller. I know that a book isn't going to sell itself. I had to do it. And I knew that goal, because then the next question, I knew why. I knew why we were doing it. We wanted to make a bestseller list. But then the next question is still a why. Why? Why do I want to be a bestseller? Well, there were answers for that too. Number 1, I really wanted that. Right or wrong, it felt like there was some legitimacy that came with that title. And number 2, I knew that it meant important things for my business as well. My topic is storytelling. Sometimes people don't take that very seriously. But if I write a best-selling book about storytelling, that could mean really good things for my business. So that was my answer to why. Now, with that answer, it made sense to keep going, right? Because it was a short period of time. I knew whether or not I would know whether or not I was a bestseller in just a few short months. Like, yes, did I need to take a few more breaks? Yes, did I need to make sure that I engaged in self-care? We'll talk more about that, of course. But the goal justified me working so hard to get there. And then suddenly it shifted. It didn't feel like a burnout, which is something that feels like it happens to you. It felt like a choice that was worth it. So that was one of my answers to the question why. Here's another time I had to ask myself that same question. It was at the very beginning of 2020. So think January, February, pre-pandemic. And on New Year's Eve, we had the biggest year we'd ever had in 2019. And we sat down to do our goals. And I said to Michael, let's double it. Let's do twice as much revenue, whatever it takes. And we were all for it. And we mapped it out and what that would look like. And we were ready to go. And I took off running. I think I spent the night in my own bed 17 times, something like that, in the first 6 weeks of 2020. And right before everything shut down, we went on a spring break trip with the family. And while we were there, I said to Michael, I'm feeling so burnt out. Why? Why am I working this hard? Why? Oh, because I want to double my revenue. Why? And asking myself that question, there wasn't really an answer. I had what I wanted. Yes, there were some changes I wanted to make and things I wanted to improve, but why kill myself over it? It wasn't worth it. And so we decided, in an effort to not be in a constant cycle and state of burnout, to scale it back. Now, the globe scaled it back for us, but we made that decision before the pandemic hit. So you can see the same question, two different scenarios, which led to two very different actions, but in both cases alleviated and broke the burnout cycle. So that's the why question. Number two, an important question to ask yourself is where? Where is this coming from? Where is this? So let's go back to I'm working so hard. I'm pushing myself. Where does it come from that's what you need to be doing? And this is where, this is what my next book is all about. This is where we move into the realm of the stories we tell ourselves. Maybe you've told yourself that in order to be successful, you have to work all day and all night and not have any friends. Maybe you've told yourself that in order to be successful, it means sacrificing this or that. Or maybe you've told yourself that burnout is a requirement of success. And maybe you've backed these stories up with examples that you've seen on Instagram or people in your family or friends who you assume are doing it the same way you are. A really important question to ask yourself to break that burnout cycle is where is this idea that I need to be burned out in order to achieve that it is a necessary evil? Where does this come from? Is it programming from long ago and a lot of things have changed? It's an important question. Number three, what can I change to alleviate all of the pressures that are on me? I want to take you back to last school year. If you have kids, I'm sure you had this similar situation where one day there was just an announcement that the kids are now going to be learning at home and we were going to be their teachers. And good luck. Right. Well, in New York, our kids are still in school right now. Now, I have friends that are on the West Coast or in Arizona, for example. They were done with school before Memorial Day. So they had 2 months? We had like a lifetime, it felt like. And I felt so burnt out during that time because I was trying to save a company. I was trying to manage my own emotions and shock and fear and everything we went through during that time. I was also trying to be a teacher and trying to be a parent to kids whose lives were completely upended. And especially in New York City, it was really challenging. And so we made it through that time, but not without a couple of rounds of burnout. And as last summer progressed and the school year approached, and it became very clear that things weren't going to be immediately back to normal, at least not for my children at our school. I asked myself, what can we change to alleviate some of the burnout? And one of the decisions we made, which was a decision we had the privilege to make, was to bring in some extra help. Now, we don't have any family in New York City, but we did have this really great waitress we met twice actually, at a restaurant. And she was out of a job because all the restaurants were closed. And so we reached out to her and said, "Hey, do you want to come and manage our kids' virtual schooling?" And she wasn't a teacher, so we didn't have to pay like a teacher's salary. It was a win for her. It was a win for us. Now, did we have to make some sacrifices financially? Certainly. But it was completely worth it to ask ourselves what we could change, and to change that thing, bring in additional support. Maybe, if we had family here, it could have been a cousin or a grandparent, whatever could have been done safely and effectively. So take a good look in those times of burnout and ask yourself, what can I change here? And even if at the first glance you say, no, there's no way I could do that, right? When we were like, well, let's get someone to manage school, we're like, no, we can't do that. Our business has been completely turned upside down. But by taking a little bit closer look, we found an incredible solution and alleviated a ton of burnout from this year. All right. Second to last question is how? How do I take care of myself? I don't think you can talk about burnout without talking about self-care. How many of you have heard about self-care before sitting in this training right now? Everybody's hands goes in the air, right? Self-care is a very popular word right now. It's a very popular topic of conversation, but I also feel like in its popularization, we've made some pretty strict assumptions about what constitutes self-care. Bubble baths and manicures, I'm sorry. I hate having to sit there with my fingers in somebody else's hands for an hour. And I think sitting in a vat of my own filth in a bath is disgusting. So those aren't going to work for me for self-care. And I also think that exercise is a tricky aspect of self-care. I do believe that eating well, drinking water, and getting regular movement, exercise, are just baseline responsibilities or requirements that come with being human, okay? But unless you really love going to a yoga class, I don't consider that self-care. I consider that human maintenance, all right? Now, for me, going to Soul Cycle is self-care because I am filled with a joy whenever I'm there. It doesn't feel like something I have to do. It feels like something I get to do. So I have friends who like running is their happy place, then by all means, that can be your self-care. But if you are one of those people who exercise to maintain your health and your humanness, that doesn't necessarily count as self-care. All right, that's what I'm just going to throw that out there. But it is important to ask then, so how do I take care of myself? What feels good for me? And to accept that it might not be what feels good for other people. Something that feels really great for me, and it's taken me a while to learn what self-care is I love building Lego sets. Yeah, I'm basically a kid. Like, I don't think there's any self-care guru out there who's going to say, and now what you should do is build a Lego set. But I love doing it. It makes me happy. It makes me relax. It uses my brain. I can get very zen. So that's what self-care is for me. So, as the friend said, self-care maybe is out to lunch with your friends, or maybe self-care is just time to yourself to do nothing, not even like read a book. But to ask yourself, in times of burnout, if you aren't really clear on what makes you feel better, you're not going to be able to make yourself feel better. So ask yourself, how do I take care of myself? All right, so those are the questions: why, where, what, how. But here is the most important thing, and it may be a little contradictory to what we typically hear, but just go with me. I mentioned that the next project I'm working on is all about the stories we tell ourselves, and how so many of the stories are automatic. We don't even realize that they're happening in the back of our minds. So many of the stories are designed to hold us back, are designed to keep us safe, and end up, not if you're someone with goals who is trying to achieve something, they're the stories that keep you in a place of self-doubt and inaction. And so adjusting the stories and paying really careful attention to the stories we tell ourselves about all aspects of our lives, including our success, including what we do to achieve that success, will have an enormous impact on your ability to do it. So, one of the big challenges I have felt personally, and maybe you have felt this as well, with burnout, is the stories I tell myself that are either about burnout or that lead to burnout. It's the that lead to emotional burnout. So, for example, maybe you are going towards a really big goal. Like you have something you want to achieve. There's something that you're shooting for. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're telling yourself stories of people who made it look easier. You're telling yourself stories of times where you've tried to achieve a big goal before and missed it. You're telling yourself stories in the moment about how you're failing, essentially. Like it should be easier. You shouldn't be feeling a burnout right now, or look at you, you're going to do all of this action and it's never going to amount to anything. Either one of those stories, either one of those statements is going to add fuel to your burnout fire. It's going to shrivel up your fuse so much more quickly. So one of the keys when it comes to breaking the cycle of burnout is to pay very close attention to the stories you're telling yourself about what it is that you're working towards right now, and what it takes to achieve it, and even the burnout itself. I feel like failures if we burn out. And certainly that's not the ideal, it's not the ideal result. But telling yourself a story about you failing because you burned out is only going to add to the sensation of burnout. So what stories could you tell yourself that will help take some of that pressure off and allow yourself time to relax, cool off, find some more energy so that you can move forward in the direction you desire? All right, I hope that this has been helpful for you. It's a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe you've heard all of this before, but again, when the success team asked me to share about breaking that burnout cycle, man, I've been through it before, and what an honor to be able to share with you a few of the things that have worked for me. So I hope that you keep pushing yourselves. I hope that you keep going for your goals, going for those dreams, and I hope you can do it without feeling those intense sensations of burnout. And know that I will be cheering for you. Keep an eye out for that 30-day challenge that's all about burnout in the Success Achievers group. I'm Kindra Hall, and I can't wait to hear all of the stories you'll tell. Take care.